You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 219. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where we talk about what really happens when you take a break from drinking. And it turns out to be the best thing you've ever done. I'm Anna, coach to high achievers who are done waking up with regret and ready to feel in control around alcohol. If you've ever wondered what your life could look like with less wine and more you, you're in the right place. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Right, today, I want to talk about stress. This comes up so often in my conversations with clients, and today I want to talk about not so much what I might call the dramatic stress or the everything's on fire stress or the out of the ordinary stress. Right? Not the kind where you could objectively say, look, something's seriously gone wrong. There's this thing that has happened, this thing that I'm dealing with, this thing that came from nowhere. I want to talk about the everyday stress that shows up, right? The kind that kind of almost hums along in the background of your life, right? It's always there. And it could even be the kind that you barely even notice because it's been there for so long, right? It's just kind of maybe something that makes you feel a little tense. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons why we drink. It is not because we're necessarily out of control, and certainly not because we're weak, but because we have this ongoing stress, and it kind of builds up and up and up. It kind of silts, if you think of silting, the way sand silts, and then it sort of it builds until we can ignore it no more. And it's always, I always like to think, is asking us for something, right? There's a message there. What is that message? That's where we want to get really clear. But initially, what we do, most people, we don't think about it that way. We think the problem is the wine. Maybe the problem is the stress. Maybe the problem is with you, right? That you should be coping better. But I want you to see that stress itself isn't the enemy, right? When we set ourselves up for a battle with stress, we're setting ourselves up for a battle with ourselves because we're the ones feeling stress, right? Stress is not some inanimate object that just kind of appears in our life. We create the stress from our thoughts. And I like to think that stress is information. It's just information. It's data. It's your system saying, look, I've been on this for a while now and I really need, I just need a bit of a rest. I need to just, it's like if you're been screaming down the motorway and think, oh, I just need to pull over or go softly and a bit slower for a bit, right? And what has happened is that wine just became the fastest, most familiar way to well, the words I hear people say is to stop the stress. I don't feel stressed when I drink. It's not actually what's happening. The stress has gone nowhere. We just think it has, right? But when we're seeking some sort of relief, and we think, I've been dealing with this for a while, wine is the most familiar, fastest way to do this. Now, I was talking to a client about this recently, and something she said really stuck with me, right? She was describing how she felt most days. I had her step me through the week, right? Because she had the pattern of being a daily drinker. This was before we started working together, and it would build into, much more drinking at the weekend. And she said that it was kind of, and we could see the pattern. This actually wasn't the word she used. She described her days, and then we saw the pattern by reviewing it. It wasn't any one point of large overwhelm. It was just she felt stretched. It's like an elastic band, felt more and more stretched the more the week went on. She was busy. She was kind of overloaded. She was dealing with all the family stuff and all the work stuff, and it was like she was stacking more and more and more things that she had to do. And then she said, as we looked at this, that it's really the everyday stuff she deals with, normal life, right? And then it doesn't then take much. Then more gets added, and then doesn't take much if there's one little thing. And this is really like we talk about the straw that breaks the camel's back. She then said, I completely fall apart, right? I can be just about managing and holding it together. And then if there's a pile of ironing I think needs doing, that's it, boom, right? I can go off on the deep end. And then she said something that showed me we had got to the crux of the matter. She said, Anna, if I can't even handle everyday stress without drinking, what's going to happen when all the things happen, right? When more stuff happens to me. And we could see that belief was creating a lot of fear and was actually embedding it in the background. So that was sort of sitting there lurking, making her feel, my goodness, there's even more pressure, right? I'm already at my limit. This is where her brain was going. I'm already barely coping. So when anything else gets added, it's going to be proof that it's going to be too much for me. And even if I haven't got that proof right now, I'm fairly sure that's how it's going to be. And of course, this all felt overwhelming. Not just because of what was happening, right? Of this humdrum stress, this everyday stress that she said she was barely coping with, but because how she was thinking about her capacity for handling it. So we didn't start by fixing her life, right? Life is going to life at you. We didn't try to remove the stress or make everything calmer, right? We don't control everything anyway. Even if you control everything in your own environment and we get that stress-free, you step out of your front door and boom, you're hit with it, right? So we just don't go there. We don't do that. But we did start to look at how she was reacting and handling it. So we started with the everyday stress she was already dealing with and how she was reacting to that, right? She was automatically reacting. We worked on noticing how quickly, right, when she was faced with it, how quickly her mind went to, oh my gosh, this is too much, or I can't handle this. I can't handle this was one of her most practiced thoughts. And we did this not to argue with those thoughts. We don't want to argue with yourself. And we did this not to pretend those things weren't stressful, but to just make them seem a bit more, to see her capability in handling them, right? We wanted to reduce this extra mental load she was adding on top. So there was already a layer of stress and just in terms of dealing with stuff. And then there was the stress she was putting on herself by worrying she wouldn't be able to handle it. And then, of course, on top of that, we had worry about, well, what happens if something really big comes along? Now, here's what surprised her as we did this, right? And we were just really looking at how she was thinking about it. Once the everyday stress stopped feeling so out of her realm of capacity, right? Where she started to feel more capable of handling it. Anytime little bits of what I'll call project-based stress, right? So the out of the usual things that happen now and then started to happen. They stopped feeling so insurmountable as well. Now, nothing external had changed at this point. Her work was still busy. The projects at home were still happening. The household needed running. The children were the same. Life was still full, but it no longer felt like she was about to break. And that's when something really important became clear to her. Sometimes the way you are thinking about your stress is enough to turn something that's uncomfortable into something that feels genuinely unmanageable. There is a gulf of difference between something that is uncomfortable versus genuinely unmanageable, especially because I am of the belief that in our lives we are given assignments to handle and we're not giving anything that we cannot cope with. But even putting that to one side, I want you to consider how differently you feel about the idea of something that's just uncomfortable versus unmanageable. And we saw this, and this different interpretation came about not because she was failing or weak, but it's all down to interpretation, right? Your brain is constantly interpreting what's happening and deciding how life-threatening it is, right? Remember, our lizard brains are there working all the time. They are geared up for survival. They want us to survive. They want us to be ready to get ourselves out of harm's way. So there's a question I often invite people to ask themselves when stress starts to feel really overwhelming and just very, very personal. It's like nobody else, Anna, is suffering like in the way I am. Instead of asking our default questions, right? Things like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this? I'm sure everybody else would be doing much better than I am. Why can't I? Instead of that, try looking at the situation itself and ask, look, would anybody else find this stressful? Right? You could even take me. I could be your test case. This situation I'm dealing with, would Anna find this stressful? She was right here in my life this exact week with this workload, this mental load. How would she feel? And I'm not talking about how I would react. I'm not talking about whether I would drink or not. I'm talking about how I would feel about the stress. Would I agree with you that this is stressful? And the answer, when we do this exercise, is almost always, yeah, they'd feel the same. And I'm sure you'd feel stressed if you're dealing with this. If you had to mark the work of 30 school children and plan lessons and cook a dinner and do all this and book the car in for an MOT and all the things. Yeah, of course you would. Right? So when we do this, we kind of see that we're not an oddball. We're not the odd one out. We're not the one who's weak or unable to cope. We see that really nothing has gone wrong. We see that you no longer have evidence that you're not coping, quote unquote, properly. This is just a stressful moment in life. And that normalization alone, just putting someone else, or it could be me, or you could be a friend or your partner or anyone, right? Somebody that you think, just want to see how she will or he would feel. That normalization of the experience can take a lot of heat out of the moment, right? Heat out of the experience. Because when stress turns into, I shouldn't feel like this, or should be handling this better, then you're not dealing with the stress anymore. You're dealing with your judgment on top of it. But when you say, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, I think anyone would find this hard. Maybe not as hard as me. You could even soften it like that. But yeah, I think Anna would find this hard. Then your nervous system is going to breathe a little sigh of relief. And you are going to stop fighting the feeling. You really will do this. You will stop immediately. You will feel a little different. Won't be feeling super relaxed. It won't be at 180, but you will start to feel different. And then when you start to do that, you can start to get curious. And then that's where you look stress in the eye, right? It's not going to then be kind of dragging you and shaking you for relief because you're paying attention. You are paying attention. And then we start to ask, what am I looking for here? And then the answer might be relief. And then the question can be, how can I get that for myself? How can I create that for myself? You create the space where the wine doesn't just leap into the breach and say, I can do that, right? We see that wine is not the thing you want. You really see that. You see that relief is the thing you want. Now, if wine has been your main way of switching off, of calming down or marking the end of the day, of course your brain is going to keep offering it. Of course your brain is going to keep offering it. This is something you have taught it. It is efficient and it works. And by the way, as many people tell me, you actually like it. You don't want to be drinking so much, but I do still enjoy the wine. Right? So this is where the wine often comes in. And this is also why simply removing the wine by force and willpower can be hard. Because if the wine has been your shortcut to feeling better, to feeling relief, to feeling not stressed, taking it away without learning other ways to create those positive sensations can feel punishing. And then we feel punished and judged on top. It makes us even more eager to drink. All right, you're still stressed. You've just lost your shortcut. It's like, well, if I can't get there with the wine, my gosh, now I feel even worse. And this is really why willpower doesn't work, and why learning how to work with stress matters so much if you want to drink less. Right? We have to play with it. We have to experience it. We have to become familiar with it. We have to not fear it. It's not to eliminate stress from your life. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic, right? But we want to change how much power it has over you, which is 100% realistic. And it's a lovely, simple place to start. So here's a little bit of homework for you. I've given you some questions you could ask yourself. So you might want to replay this and jot them down. But here's another little exercise. When you feel stressed, and maybe it's already tonight, right? That's the beautiful thing I would say about daily drinking. If that's you, we have lots. We have seven nights a week. We get opportunities to practice. So when you feel stressed and when you notice that pull towards wine, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what am I actually looking for right now? Right now. And I want you to answer it. And I don't want you to ask yourself, what do I want to drink? I want you to ask, what do I want to feel? Right? If you could wave a magic wand right now, how would you feel? Right? And how would you create that? The things I hear again and again and again and again. I want to feel rested. I want to have space. I want to create comfort. I want reassurance. I want a boundary maybe, right? I want time alone. So when you ask yourself what you're looking for right now, that can just change the vibe in the moment. That can take the friction out of it, because stress does not need to be shut down and locked away and never darken your door. It needs just to be understood. If you could understand and get to know your stress, think about how you would handle it. You'd become much more skilled at understanding yourself, right? So that question helps a lot. And when stress stops automatically meaning, I need to stop this right now, right? When you stop thinking that the moment you feel stressed, the urgency of the situation is taken out of the experience. And when the urgency goes, you get a bit more space, and then you start to see you have options. That's what we're doing here. We're putting our foot in the door, we're wedging the door open, we're giving ourselves space to see that we have options. This is not, again, I stress. There we go. See what I did there? This is not about getting rid of stress. This is not about fixing your life. This is not about becoming perfectly calm and becoming, a Zen master. This is none of that. But it is about learning how to respond to stress in a way that doesn't require you numbing it. And if you are listening to this and thinking, yes, this is me, I'm going to do this. I love this stuff, Anna. This is me because I drink because I want to feel better, right? I want you to work with me. If you have been suffering with this, and I use the word suffer advisedly, stuck in this rut of over drinking, feeling regret, feeling remorse, knowing that this doesn't fit, right? This is the one thing in your life that just doesn't fit. I want you to go to 90dayslater.co, and I want you to book a call to talk with me about working with you, where we will completely and utterly change the way you deal with stress and your patterns around stress. And this, my friend, will change your life. I just recorded an episode that's going to be an interview episode. It's going to come on the podcast in a couple of weeks. My lovely client Ishali. And you are going to learn how taking this step forward to change your relationship with alcohol will touch all elements of your life for the better. So go ahead and do that. 90dayslater.co 90dayslater.co and click on the book a call, or you can email me, Anna at 90dayslater.co. All right, that's it for today. I will see you next week. If this episode hit home and you're ready to explore what life could look like with alcohol in the back seat, let's talk. I work with people one-on-one who are ready to create the relationship with alcohol that works for them, so they feel powerful in their choices and at peace with their habits. Go to 90dayslater.co and click on book a call, or grab one of the free guides in the show notes to this episode. And if this podcast is helping you, a rating or review goes a long way to help others find this work too.